What's happening, agents? Cheesemaster Zero here, and welcome back to another Division 2 video. Today I'd like to go over the current global event, and let me tell you, screw this event. Nah, I'm only half kidding, of course, but seriously, this one did piss me off at first, I'm not gonna lie. Why, you might ask? Well, let's get into the specifics, and I'll explain what did and definitely did not work for me. So for starters, let's break down the new Corrosive Shell global event. I'll go over how the event works, the build that I ended up using after some trial and error, and why this setup has been the most consistent option that I've found so far. So let's start with the event itself. In the Corrosive Shell event, enemies spawn with a purple aura which acts as a volatile shield that deflects most normal bullet damage. If you simply try to brute force your way with the standard damage build, it ain't gonna work. You're just gonna get frustrated, probably uninstall the game, and do something crazy like go play Marathon or something, I don't know. So what you have to do is apply a status effect first in order to break their shell and make them vulnerable. Once it breaks, it creates a corrosive blast around the target, and any enemy or agent caught in the cloud will get burned for a short time. When you finish off a corroded enemy, you get a momentum buff that boosts weapon damage by 50% and rate of fire by 25% for 10 seconds. And then hopefully you can get them down within that time frame, because after 15 seconds the corrosive shell comes back and you'll need to pop it all over again with another status effect. So the basic loop is status effect first, damage second, kill the enemy. The cool thing about this event is that you have tons of options for how you want to apply the status effect of your preference, whether it's from grenades, abilities, or special ammo. Heck, there's even an exotic gear piece that'll automatically burn enemies within 20 meters. Given this rule set, there are a couple of builds that do stand out: Eclipse Protocol and Ongoing Directive, with Ongoing being the dominant choice in my opinion. Now, before I get into the build I ultimately settled on, let's talk about the pros and cons of the two philosophies behind these gear sets. And at the end I'll show you a previous build that actually worked really well during the Assault global event, which I have another video on, and we'll talk about that later. For now, let's get to the two main gear sets that are all about status effects. First one, Eclipse Protocol, or EP for short. The 4-piece set bonus is called Indirect Transmission, and it's all about spreading those status effects to enemies faster than a student naval aviator spreads diseases around the civil quarter in Pensacola. Status effects spread on kill to all enemies within 10 meters and refresh 50% of the duration. The backpack and chest towns respectively are Symptom Aggravator, which increases status effect damage by 30%, and Proliferation, which increases the range from 10 to 15 meters, and the refresh rate from 50 to 75%. When I was running this set, I paired it with the Exotic Mask Vial, which adds additional damage to status effect enemies, and the damage is tied to your concussive grenade and your status effect stats. The problem I personally ran into while rolling solo was due to the fact that the EP gear set is heavy on yellow cores. All you solo players out there know that it's crucial to run with a little bit more of a balanced build when you don't have a full team. So I really struggled to throw down the DPS that I would have liked to pick off the enemies with. And of course, those black tusk sons of bitches with their tanks and warhounds just made it even more difficult. But the real bottleneck I found was running out of ways to reapply the status effects without having to wait for special ammo to proc or for one of my abilities to cool down. This slowed down the gameplay, and if you're like me, that could be frustrating because the whole power fantasy is dominating enemies and clearing missions efficiently. I was, however, able to make adjustments to get this build to work better, as you can see in the sample gameplay. I put on two abilities that effectively apply status effects, along with the goalie named AR and the Lexington for perfect pressure point and Vindictive. Then I switched out two cores from yellow to red, hoping to up my damage output just a bit. But the gear set that I would strongly advise over EP is the trusty Ongoing Directive gear set. For the uninitiated, let me quickly talk about what that set does. Aside from increasing status effects and reload speed, the main talent, Rules of Engagement, hooks you up with nearly infinite hollow point damage as long as you can keep chaining those kills. Hollow point ammo causes the bleed status effect. How it works is shooting a status effect enemy applies a mark. Killing the marked enemy supplies you with a full magazine of hollow point ammo. And I know the game calls them clips, but for those who actually shoot guns, it's a bit of a pet peeve to call something a clip when it's a magazine. Anyway, having a plentiful stock of special ammo comes in very handy since you have a consistent way of popping those corrosive shells. And this is really the main point about the event. It's not as if you need the status effects to do all the heavy lifting, they just open the door to pouring on that DPS. Now, in order to actually get the hollow points to proc, you'll need to apply a status effect in some other way, since not all rooms have red canisters conveniently placed next to all the enemies. I found one kind of neat way of accomplishing this was by using the Shocker Punch exotic holster in combination with St. Elmo's engine and a shield. With that combo, you can run right up to the enemy, smite them with your shield, and instantly apply shock. Then you finish them off with any weapon and get those hollow points loaded up. Of course, this isn't the most efficient or safe way of doing things, considering that you do take damage when you're that close and you pop that shell. But it was still fun. You can really choose any number of ways to apply that initial status effect and you'll be fine. For instance, I ran a blinder firefly for a few missions, and that was kind of nice because you could tag multiple enemies across the map and not have to wait for them to be all close together. Other options like the Stinger Hive, shock traps, even the fire starter chem launcher should get the job done. I opted to equip the chest piece for the damage buff, but for the backpack I went with Golan gear with a blue core for increased status effects, and then I threw on the Creeping Death talent, which spreads status effects to all enemies within 8 meters of your target. Overall, I really liked the ongoing Directive build. It's totally fine for solo ops. I eventually swapped out the Goalie AR for the Carnage LMG for 2 reasons. First, Carnage comes with Perfect Sadist, which deals amplified damage to bleeding targets. Plus, as an LMG, it had a significantly larger magazine size than an AR. I felt pretty silly waiting so long to swap it out, considering it's kind of a no-brainer. I really enjoy run-in solo ops on Heroic, but I will admit for this particular global event, I might recommend grabbing a friend or a clanmate, or heck, even a random or two. That way you can have one person who just focuses on keeping the status effects up, while the other team members melt the enemies with DPS. But if you're a lone wolf type like me, know that this global event is a bit more challenging than the previous few. Oh, and before I wrap this one up, as a bonus suggestion, I would highly recommend using the Memento backpack shotgun build that I highlighted in a previous video. It's just a really robust, highly resilient, and powerful shotgun and shield build that allows you to run right up to the enemy and blast them in the face. Paired with the Scorpio exotic shotgun with its septic shock talent, there's no waiting on abilities to cooldown or having to scavenge grenades to lob at the enemy, you just point and shoot. Well, there you have it. These are my takes on the Corrosive Shell Global event and my personal recommendation for what works best. As always, I'd like to hear from you all. Am I on track, or is there a better build that relieves the pain in the ass factor for this week? Let me know in the comments. For the Fat Dads, this has been Cheesemaster Zero. And if you're new to the channel, I'm extremely grateful for your support and for staying to the end of the video. If this helped you out at all, please be sure to give it a like. We started the Fat Dads channel as a group of old school gamers that enjoy the social aspect of gaming. And we're attempting to build a community of like-minded, gaming-obsessed, fun-loving, crap-talking gamers, and we would love for you to be part of the crew. If you're into chill gaming, sharing stories, and telling dad jokes, please consider staying connected by subscribing, and stay tuned for more chill gaming content. See ya.